Hello, friends. Welcome to today's episode um, about light as a truth. Okay, let's begin. Light has always been our oldest form of understanding. Long before language or geometry, people follow it. It's a sign that the world was alive. Every culture has given it a different face: divinity, knowledge, revelation, compassion. Yet, across history, it keeps returning in the same quiet teacher. To study light is to study self, truth itself, because what it shows us is never only physical, but also emotional, moral, and spiritual. If seeing is how we touch the world, then light is the moment the world reaches back. Human history begins in darkness. Then someone strikes a spark, and the room changes. At first, fire wasn't only heat, it was comprehension. The instant we realized that sight could be expanded. Since then, every structure we built for the temples, observatories, has been an attempt to capture the moment again. Walk into the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, and light behaves differently. It doesn't descend, it hovers. Gold tesserae on the walls shimmer like fragments of sunrise suspended in air. The glow doesn't belong to any candle or window. It seems to radiate from within the stones themselves. In that space, light becomes a kind of breathing, slow, continuous, and timeless. The Byzantines believed divine presence revealed itself through luminosity, not words. Their art was theology of reflection, a reminder that the sacred is not somewhere else, but within the art of perceiving it. Centuries later, the Renaissance turned that same hunger to outward. Artists began to trust daylight as a language. Leonardo da Vinci painted air itself, allowing form to dissolve into softness. Through fumato, he discovered the real world doesn't need perfection, it needed patience. Light now carried reason, not mystery. It revealed an order that could be studied, measured, and honored. The transition from gold to atmosphere was not but rejection of faith, but an expression of it. The sacred moved from icon to observation. Painting light became a gesture of gratitude for the visible world. It taught us truth isn't somewhere far above, it is here in the play between shadow and form. That message still feels radical: to see the world as it is, and to call that art holy remains one of the art's quietest revolution. Light as discovery. By the 15th century, light had become a discipline. Perspective and proportion turning vision into geometry, a way to understand not only beauty but also logic. In Massaggio, the Tribumani, sunlight unites heaven and earth under one rational sky. Every shadow falls where it must. The painting's clarity feels moral. Coherence itself becomes a form of grace. Yet, clarity can only last until someone questions it. In the next century, Caravaggio takes that obedient light and breaks it open. He paints the moment illumination stopped being polite. In the calling of Saint Matthew, 1599-1600, a single shot slides across the tavern, catching faces mid-gesture. The beam does not explain, it demands. It turns ordinary men into witnesses of their own awakening. Caravaggio tenebrism is not just a drama, it is philosophy rendered in shadow. The Renaissance taught us to map the world. Caravaggio reminds us that truth is not always visible, and that clarity without comparison can be cruel. His light is a decoration. It is conscience. It exposes sensation, greed, faith, doubt, and the whole range of human interior life. That shift is why his paintings still feel modern. They capture the tension between what we show and what we hide. His light does not bless or condemn, it simply insists that we look. Perhaps that is what rediscovery really is, not in the invention of new facts, but the courage to notice what has been waiting in the dark. Travelers to the Ajanta caves of India. The murals were painted more than 1,000 years before Caravaggio, yet they already speak the same language of illumination. Bodhisattvas gaze out from the rock walls, their hollows softly glowing, not with borrowed sunlight, but with a quiet, inward shine. The artists of Ajanta understood that the deepest light doesn't fall from the sky, it rises from awareness itself. In Buddhism, light is not reward but realization. The word Buddhi means awakening enlightenment. Enlightenment isn't a supernatural event. It's a clearing of illusion. When the mind becomes transparent, the world no longer needs to change for truth to appear. The light that matters is not external but experiential. In Western art, the same inward clarity surface is unexpected places. Vermeer woman reading a letter, 1663, seems like a simple domestic scene, yet its stillness feels infinite. The light entering through the window does nothing extraordinary. It rests on a wall, a piece of paper, a human face, and in doing so, it turns ordinary time into meditation. The power of Vermeer lines is its restraint. It refuses to dramatize. It simply reveals, looking at it, one sense of what Buddhist teachers call rajana, wisdom that sees without judgment. It's not about beauty or narrative, it's about presence. The art of looking becomes its own reward. The stillness in that room is the same stillness sought on a meditation cushion. Truth is not something achieved, it is something recognized. Centuries later, Krishnamurti gives that insight modern vocabulary. Truth is a pathless land. The moment you create a path, you create distance, and truth is never distant, it exists only in the immediacy of perception. Krishnamurti teachings feels like an echo of Vermeer window. Stop searching for the light. Notice that it is already falling across your life. He often described awareness as a flame without smoke, clarity without residue. The mind, when unclouded by comparison or fear, burns with its own brightness. The seeing is doing. He said, meaning that real change doesn't happen after understanding but within it. To see something fully, cruelty, greed, beauty, love is already to begin transforming it. Standing before Rothko painting can feel like that kind of recognition. Those vast rectangles of colors filled, hovering, and dissolving aren't pictures of anything, yet they seem to respond to whatever you bring into the room. The light isn't on the canvas, it's between you and it. If you stay longer enough, the boundaries of soften, and you begin to feel that flame without smoke in your own awareness. Rothko once said he wanted his paintings to make people weep, but the tears he meant was not sadness. They were recognition, the body weight of saying, I remember this silence. That's what Krishnamurti was pointing to. Seen so purely that thought falls away, and what's life left is simply light. Not metaphorical, but mental. A cleared field where perception and peace become the same thing. Krishnamurti often challenges his listener with a question. Can you look at a tree without naming it? To see without the word tree, without the weight of memory or expectation, is almost impossible. Yet, it is precisely in that instant, he said, that you meet reality directly. Few artists have turned that question into space as powerfully as James Turrell. His installations are not just about objects, but about perception itself. Step into one of his rooms, and the light seems to have substance. It hangs in the air like mist, changing color so slowly that time itself begins to loosen. There is no picture to look at, there is only looking. In Turrell's sky space, an opening in the ceiling frames the sky, as light shifts from afternoon to dusk. The aperture stops being a window but becomes an idea. Where does space end? And where does vision begin? The experience feels less like observation and more like participation. You realize that the sense exists only because you are present to it. The observer and the observed are no longer separate. Buddhist philosophy calls this non-duality. Turrell simply calls it art. What happens in these rooms is not entertainment, it's calibration. Your perception relearns how to stand on its own, unassisted by thought. When you emerge, the world outside, traffic, faces, even the air, feels newly illuminated, not because it's changed, but because you did. Modern life is saturated with brightness but short on illumination. Screens glow in every pocket, yet attention grows thinner by day. The problem isn't lack of light, it's loss of depth. That's why the work of Hiroshi Sugimoto feels like an antidote. His seascapes reduce the world to horizon, water, and sky. Each photograph captures the quiet water between two furnaces. At first, they appear identical, but the longer you look, the more differences emerge. Texture, density, the way red leans toward blue. The image doesn't move, but your perception does. Sugimoto teaches patience through repetition. He offers no spectacle, only duration. The viewer becomes aware of time as a living dimension of it, not the flash of the moment, but the persistence of seeing. In a culture of immediacy, his art asks us to rediscover continuity. Olafur Eliasson approaches the same theme from the opposite direction. His weather portrait fills a museum with a monumental artificial sun. Visitors lie on the floor, bathed in orange mist, their silhouettes mirrored infinitely above. The experience is both communal and private, overwhelming and tender. People wept beneath that fake sun because it reminded them of something true, the memory being smaller under the real one. Eliasson used illusion to restore attention. The light may be artificial, but the awareness it triggers is not. His installation transformed being seen from consumption back into contemplation. In both Sugimoto and Eliasson, the lesson is the same. Technology changes the tools of vision, but not the need for sincerity in the art of looking. Light in physics refracts when it enters a new medium. Awareness does the same when it passes through the prism of human thought. Reality is pure, a single white beam, but our fears and memories split into fragments, good and bad, me and you, past and future. We spend our lives studying the rainbow and forget the light. Buddhism calls this misperception avidya, ignorance, not stability but misseeing. The work of awakening is a work of reuniting the spectrum. Every meditation, every painting, every honest conversation becomes a way of reducing distortion. Imagine the same prism on a table. A beam enters, disperses, then through another prism, turns again into white. That is what artists and contemplatives attempt, not to destroy difference but to remind it of its origin. Krishnamurti might call it freedom from the known. A physicist might call it coherence. Both point toward the same phenomenon. Clarity without fragmentation. In this sense, enlightenment is not a mystical state but an optical one. The alignment of perception with reality the Buddhist explained. It says, Nirvana, the extinguishing of illusion's flame. But what goes out is not light, it is destruction. What remains is steady brilliance. The experiment is available to anyone. Every moment is potential reflection. When you recognize that you are a medium through which light bends, the idea of separation fades. Seeing the world clearly becomes the same as being clear with it. There is a softer side of illumination. There is a softer side of illumination. Light is not only reveals the comforts. In Buddhist thought, Bodhisattva clothes isn't self-celebration but care. It radiates outward, touching others without condition. The purpose of awakening is not escape, it is return, to re-enter the world with eyes that no longer define. Compassion is seeing without self-centeredness. Vermeer understood this intuitively. His rooms are small, yet every object inside received equal rays. The light falls with fairness on faces, maps, letters, chairs. It carries no preference, only presence. This is why those paintings feel human. They see the world without hierarchy. Krishnamurti describes compassion as the highest form of intelligence. It is a moral superiority. It is perception that no longer distorts through fear or desire. To see someone clearly, without trying to fix or use them, is already the art of love. In that sense, compassion is not an emotion added to awareness. It is awareness in its purest state. Light teaches the same lesson. It touches everything equally, yet it changes each thing differently. The surface determines the glow. Compassion works that way too. It doesn't flatten. Difference is illuminated. Awareness can't be forced, it can be cleared. Most of the time, the mind behaves like a dusty lens. Thoughts, opinions, and habits cloud perception until even beauty feels ordinary. Then the moment arrives, a pause, a painting, a piece of music, and the dust falls away. The world shines, not brighter, just truer. That experience isn't mystical, it's the mind working as designed. Caravaggio said that sins come beforewards. Buddhism adds that sin comes before itself. When the observer acquires, the observation expands. What remains is direct experience, the world meeting itself through your attention. Art helps because it slows us down long enough to let this happen. And theoretical, a Tarot, even a single candle can act as turning fork for perception. After standing with them, ordinary light begins to feel extraordinary again. The colors of wall, a gleam of classes, a rhythm of passing clouds, all of it becomes articulate. The lesson is simple but demanding. Clarity is not something to achieve, but to remember. It's already here, waiting for you to stop interfering with it. The poet Eliot called it the still point of turning world. Light moving at an unimaginable speed becomes that stillness when it touches the eye. In an instant, movement and calm are the same. Every encounter with light is an invitation to return to that still point, the space where seeing and being align. Terrell Atten Rein captures it perfectly. Concentric ovals of light suspended inside a dome, shifting so slowly that you lose track of time. Elias and propagate the sun, and Sugimoto patient horizon do the same from opposite direction. One overwhelms, the other whispers, both lead toward silence. At a still point, light is no longer something we observe, it is what we are observing with. The distinction dissolves, it is where art meets meditation, physics meets philosophy. Illumination, in the end, is not about brightness, but about intimacy with reality. Looking back across centuries, and light has changed its meaning countless times. For Byzantines, it was divine truth. For Renaissance, human reason. For Caravaggio, moral awakening. For Vermeer, mindfulness. For Rothko, emotion. For Terrell and Eliasson, perception itself. Each redefinition says more about us than about light. What stays constant is our need for it. The desire to live in a world we can both see and believe in. Buddhism tells us enlightenment is not a destination but a return to awareness. Krishnamurti adds that truth begins when seeking ends. Between them lies a simple human insight. Light has never stopped shining, we only forget to look. So perhaps the work of life and of art is not to change brighter sources, but to keep the eyes clean enough to recognize the ones already here. Every sunrise, every lamp, every face illuminated across the table is a reminder that the world is still offering itself to us. Stand there for a moment, let it reach you. That is what it means to live in light. Okay, thank you for staying with me until the end of the episode, and I hope you get something meaningful, useful, insightful for your journey to learn art as me. Okay, thank you and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.